be a lot of fun to talk about, given all the kind of chaos that we've been going through these last couple of days with this massive bomb cyclone that hit our coast. And we've been scrambling to get news updates on weather, power outages, floods, surf, you name it. We've been working on this. Good morning, Cindy.
Very good morning, Leanne. How are you doing this morning?
Oh, really?
Hanging in there?
I'm hanging in there.
By a thread.
By a thread. But we're here, and we're here ready to talk to you today about a good topic, which is centered writing.
Oh my God, I could go on for the rest of my life.
Well, I'll give our audience a little bit of information so they can understand what this is about and where it started, and then we'll get into the show.
Okay, wonderful.
So centered writing was founded by Sally Swift.
Yes.
She developed the principles of centered writing, which is breathing, soft eyes, centering, building blocks, and grounding using functional anatomy, imagery, horse and rider biomechanics, and elements from the martial arts.
That's correct.
As tools to improve the balance and effectiveness of the rider.
It's amazing, amazing material.
And today, centered writing lessons, clinics, and instructor certification courses are taught worldwide by certified centered writing instructors Cindy. And clinicians who can help you along the journey. And it's all styles of horsemanship, levels of experience, and riding interests are served. And when I look at some of the principles here, it really applies to a lot of sports psychology.
It applies to anything that has a spine. If you have a spine and you're from planet Earth, you will benefit from it.
And so golf, skiing, boarding, daily life, coping with a massive storm in our area.
That's right. Walking, and riding horses just so happens to be very beneficial, not only for the rider, but very beneficial to the horse.
So you ended up here in Sea Ranch just a few months ago.
Several months ago,
Several months ago. And your business was located in the East Bay, San Francisco.
Right, East Bay. I had a 45-year established writing business there that I started when I was 21. And very, very long story short, I ended up leaving that and coming up here to take care of my father.
Well, we're glad to have you and your horse, Chris.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about Chris.
Well, I got an offer in the Grass Valley area to take 10 Hanoverians that were bred on a Hanoverian breeding facility and had not been handled for about 5 years. And the offer was to take these horses that were relatively green and school them and sell them. And again, very, very long story short, I fell in love with one of them and I bought her and brought her home. And that was the end of my attempt to reschool 10 Hanoverians and resell them.
Tell us a little bit about your background as far as your business and where you got started. Why don't you give everybody an idea of the type of business you had and what got you into it?
Well, at a very, very young age, I was doing some teaching unprofessionally. I had read all the books as a child and got my own horse and was schooling my horse at age 9. And by 14 or 15, people were asking me questions about what to do with their bodies and what to do with their horses. And even at a young age, what I noticed was that even if people had 3 years, 5 years, 8 years of experience, they had no foundation. They had no foundation. And if you don't have a foundation, it doesn't matter what it is, a barn, a house. If you don't have a foundation, you have nothing to build on. And I was very, very convicted about that. And after college, I decided that teaching writing was what I wanted to do. And so I went to England to study the classical foundation. that all riders need to have in order to start at point 1 and work to point 2 and work to point 3 and all the way on up. And so that's what I specialize in, is the classical foundation for the rider. And I've had a lot of people that come in with 10, 15, 20 years of riding experience with no foundation. And they come to me because they realize they're not getting anywhere. And the reason they're not getting anywhere, they have got no foundation, so I have to start them all over again. And I've had people after the very first lesson look at me and go, "You're going to tell me I have to start all over again, aren't you?" And I go, "Well, now you got a choice. You can continue down the wrong path that you know is not working for you, or you can make a 180 and come with me."
And your business was located in the East Bay. Exactly where was it?
Well,
or where is it still?
Well, originally, I started in the Danville, San Ramon, Pleasanton, Oakland, Livermore, that area, and was teaching there for the majority of my life. And then I kind of got the bug to move and ended up buying horse property in Grass Valley and attempted to start another business there. And I still have that property. It's a beautiful piece of property. It's horse property. But, you know, I had to take care of my dad. And so I left it, and it's under lease right now. So it's all taken care of.
If you're just tuning in, you're listening to KGUA in Wallala, 88.3 FM. I have with me as my guest today, Cindy Leisure of Leisure Equestrian Services, who now lives in the Sea Ranch, as you said, taking care of her dad. I'm Lindsey, your host today, and we are streaming around the world at kgua.org. Just click listen live at the top of the page, and the web app will come up, and you just click play. And we are getting an opportunity right now in the midst of the storms that are coming in on this river of storms, this environmental river of storms, to talk about breathing techniques, centering yourself, and it all ties together to help ground us and specifically we're talking about horseback riding.
Right.
And this helps you tune into the horse better. So it helps there. So describe and tell people how they can get in touch with you too. If they're interested, since you're in the area, you can go up to Fort Bragg, you are down to Sea Ranch. So the whole coastal community here. Describe how they could get in touch with you.
Well, I did have to let my website go, my business website go, because I figured I was not going to be returning to teaching, but I would never want to give it up. I would love to continue with it. But obviously at the time, the priority was my dad.
Exactly.
And so the best way that people could reach me would be my phone number. I do have business email.
Why don't give us the business email?
Okay, the business email is Cindy, that's CINDI at leisure, LEISURE, and then equestrian is EQUESTRIAN.com would probably be the best way to reach me.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the connection with your horse.
Okay. Well, one of the things that we have to realize that is so vitally important, that is never, I hate to use the word stressed, but kind of it's not stressed enough, is the importance of the position of the rider. Because we communicate with our horses through our bodies. And most people, if you're from planet Earth, tend to get tight or rigid and locked, and that's normal. And as long as you recognize that and you're giving the tools to correct it, then you're on your way to learning how to communicate with a horse, because a horse does not understand the communication of tension. And if we're tense, which we are, the cues, the communication is completely blocked. But if we learn to free up those tensions and let them go and surrender them. And we learn to come into a position of lightness and balance and freedom and movement. The horse can say, oh my God, I understand you. Thank you. Now I can do what you want me to do.
I love
But
that.
if we're sitting up there and we're looking down, which I don't know about you, but I was taught to look between the horse's ears, and that'll tend to make you hold your breath, and it'll tend to lock you down, and the cement company will come in and fill your body, and then the horse doesn't understand you, and you get frustrated, and nobody's happy.
I understand this watching people who are either new to riding a horse or it's been a while since they've ridden a horse. And that fear inside is what causes them to look down.
Absolutely.
They think they need to watch their body and the horse below them, when the best thing is to look forward with the image in your head of where you want to go.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Where your eyes go, your head goes.
That applies to life.
Yeah. It's like where your eyes go, your head goes.
Yeah.
And where your head goes, your body follows. And then you go down into this fetal position, and then you lose your seat, which is your whole support system. You know?
I was reading the latest newsletter from Centered Riding. There's a new president who's living, I think, in Holland. And these courses are taught all over the world.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And she was talking about how in one of the equestrian events that she was in, how she kept bringing her attention back to herself and lowering her center of gravity.
Yes, very important.
Very much like the martial arts.
That's right.
Right.
Yes. That's where centered riding, one of the things centered riding evolved from was the martial arts. It's all about grounding and getting your seat down, keeping the upper body really light and buoyant. Yeah, because your parts, every part of your body has to be moving freely and independently with every motion that horse gives you. And I know one of the things you and I were talking about the other day was the instruction of just move with the horse. Well, that tells you what to do, but it doesn't tell you how to do it. And if you don't know how to do it, by understanding every movement that horse is producing in your ankle joint, your knee joint, your hip joint, your elbow joint, if you don't understand how that horse is moving every single independent part of you, that's more like survival riding versus riding. There's riding and there's surviving.
And you can see this from the ground as you're watching the person who is riding around you, because they're absorbed with a lot of things that they're thinking about, and they may not realize this is going on in their body.
Oh, absolutely.
But you can see it.
Oh, sure.
And so you can point that out to them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You can see if somebody's not even breathing.
You can.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because their body isn't moving and the horse is reacting to it.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I remember the other day I was riding my horse out from the stables here on the Sea Ranch, and you'd mentioned something about even humming or thinking about a song, keeping the breathing going. And I even noticed myself out on the trail from time to time, suddenly I realized I was holding my breath.
Right. That's a wonderful thing that you are aware of that.
Right.
Because if you're aware of it, you can change it.
Right. So when I did, I felt more relaxed, connected to my horse, I felt more in tune with them, right?
Well, the wonderful thing about humming, and I learned this a very interesting way. I was in a big seminar with Sally Swift as a demo rider, and she put me on a microphone and about 500 people that were watching that I didn't know, and she asked me to start humming. And it was a wonderful experience. And so I've been using it ever since. And the reason that it's so powerful is because it not only puts you in the moment, but it does keep you breathing. When you're humming, you can't hold your breath. And so you are breathing, you're humming, And it really removes you from this analytical side of your brain, that left side that's nagging you, that's saying, oh, you don't look good, or you need to do this better or that better. Completely removes you from that. And it puts you into the right side, which is the fun side, the creative side, the side that has fun and enjoys. And that immediately lets you feel released. And the horses, again, a lot happier. You'll see their ears moving, or their tail moving, or their back swinging more, because you're more alive on that horse than you are when you were holding your breath or being analytical about something. And so the idea is to first check ourselves, because we cannot offer anything to the horse that we don't already possess in our own body. So if you're trying to create softness in the horse, but you are not breathing and you are not moving in a way that is complementary to the horse, then you're shutting yourself and your horse down.
Those are techniques I even tell myself when I'm doing voice recordings, because when you relax, then your voice has a different tone.
Absolutely.
And a cadence and sound.
Yeah.
So very similar to being in tune with that horse. And then once you're in tune with that horse too, that helps prevent accidents.
Oh, you bet it does. I mean, you could literally breathe your horse through a spooky situation, because if he's saying, oh, mom's breathing and mom's soft and going, then there must not be anything too spooky. But if you're sitting up there and you're holding your breath because you see the horse-eating dragon around the corner, you better believe you're going to spook your horse.
If you're just tuning in, this is Cindy Leisure here with me today on Peggy's Place, Leisure Equestrian Services. We're talking about centered riding, which can also apply to many things in life. I'm your host, Lindsey. We're live on YouTube as well as on 88.3 FM along the coast. We've got about 50,000 listeners on air, and then we're also online streaming. Anybody with any internet device. I know there are a lot of people out there don't have much internet right now because of the massive power outages along our coast. But if you do get internet access, you just go to kgua.org and click listen live at the top of that page, and a web app will open up and you can listen in anytime. But you can also go to YouTube later. Anytime you want, the show's going to be there on our YouTube channel. And later on, it's going to be on SoundCloud as well as a podcast. So back to, Cindy, one thing I wanted to talk about was Cindy, the founder, Sally Swift, and how she really got this going after she retired from her business. And what, she was in her 70s, was it?
She was well into her 80s.
My goodness.
Yes. And she had scoliosis and suffered from scoliosis since childhood. And no one could help her and no one could help her. And her story is that she finally was able to meet with a Alexander practitioner. The Alexander technique is a Nobel Prize winning physical therapy. And so it's pretty hard to debate the findings, the teachings, and the theory of something like that. And so she got involved with some practitioners, and they were able to get her off a walker. They were able to get her off a cane. And she could get around as an 80-some-year-old with scoliosis pretty well because of the Alexander technique. And so she had some clientele teaching riding and started to use the principles of the Alexander technique with her students. And lo and behold, she started to notice some pretty significant changes, differences, and improvements in the people that she was working with, and developed a business that way. And then she wrote that famous first book of hers, Centered Riding. And after I had come back from school in England, I had read that book and I could not believe how this whole new way of explaining classical principles could fit so beautifully into what I was already doing, which was foundation work. And so I spent about 23 to 25 years studying centered writing. And I have worked with hundreds and hundreds of people that have told me it's absolutely been life-changing for them. I know it's been life-changing for me. And I knew that I could pass that on. And so that's what I do. And Sally, broke the path.
And she didn't even advertise. It just word of mouth.
Right.
And then before long, she was going up and down the East Coast with her teachings.
Correct.
And in the early 1980s, when she was in her early 70s, that's when she began traveling to other locations in the US, Canada, Australia, and Europe.
Correct.
And as she developed her techniques and taught people about the 4 basics of centered writing, the demand for clinics and instructor clinics blossomed and has become a worldwide organization with members all across the United States, Canada, Australia, Austria, Belgium. The list goes on. It's amazing how many countries have created clinics.
Right. And she was based out of the East Coast. So most of the original instructors, certified instructors, that's very, very important, certified people that, can go around the world and take people through training programs and get them certified. We do have to go back, depending on the longevity that we've been instructors, you have to go back anywhere from 2 to 6 years to get certified. And that is a must. If you don't go back and get your recertification, you're given your notice. You have to remove all your advertising. You can't, you cannot advertise as an instructor. You have to remove their logo from all of your advertising. So it really keeps people, really keeps people, organized and doing what needs to be done to make sure that we all are getting the very, very best education.
Well, it sounds like we've got an open door and there was some machinery outside. We apologies to our audience out there, but and to Cindy here. I am sitting with Cindy Leisure of Leisure Equestrian Services, and we were talking about the founder of centered writing and principles of centered writing. And it was interesting that Sally received the Lifetime Achievement Award for the American Writing Instructor Certification Program in 1997 and in 2006. And at the age of 93, she was inducted into the United States Dressage Foundation's Hall of Fame. And
amazing, huh?
Quite amazing. And she was also presented with the 7th Annual Equine Industry Vision Award by Pfizer Animal Health and American Horse Publications, an award that recognizes innovation, ingenuity, and service across the entire equine market.
Yes, it's wonderful.
I can't believe it.
She had unbelievable influence. And, it doesn't seem like that long ago, really not that long ago, when I would tell people that I teach centered writing and they'd say, well, what's that? And now you say centered writing and they go, oh, I read the book, or I took a lesson, or I did this, or I read or I saw the videos, but there's nothing more life-changing than to take a writing lesson or even go to an Alexander practitioner and have them work on your body. That's
maybe that's something I do.
Pretty amazing stuff. Than just reading it from a book. And that's one great experience. But if you're in front of somebody that's spent, 10 or 15 or 20, even almost 30 years teaching this, it's, there's nothing like, it's the difference between taking a picture of something and then going and seeing it live. And the difference is amazing. So yeah, I love it. I tell people I skip to work every day when I teach. And so, because it's such a life changer.
And didn't she say something about these techniques can also be blended into other forms of training and teachings?
Absolutely.
It's not like this is a standalone.
No.
My way's the highway, the right way. None of that.
No, the greatest thing, Leanne, is, and I tell people this, is I don't have to sell this material. I don't have to sell that it works. I just say, go show me what you do normally. And then I watch people ride, and then I have them come in and I make a couple little changes. I don't tell them what I'm doing. I just make a couple simple little, very simple changes. And I say, now go out and feel what this is like compared to what you're used to doing. And
so you're helping them learn to do it themselves.
Absolutely. I try to teach people that they can do this by themselves on their own. They can practice all they want to practice because I've given them the tools as to what is right, because their body told them it was right, versus what is old and different, that they probably don't want to go back and do that anymore. So they come back to me and they look at me and they go, yeah, those changes you made, they're really pretty awesome. They felt really different, and it made me feel really weird. Sometimes people say it made me feel like I was on Mars. And I said, well, that's because it's so different, but I didn't have to write up an act of Congress to get it done, did I? I made a simple little change, and you're telling me that you feel pretty doggone good and better and more balanced and more connected and more grounded, more secure.
Mm-hmm. And see, this is all intriguing to me because I started out as a cowgirl on a huge cattle and horse ranch. We raised quarter horses in East Texas.
Wonderful.
We had a stallion. We had about 10,000 acres. And I rode all the time since I was about 2 years old.
That's wonderful.
I was in rodeo at the age of 5. I actually stopped at the age of 7.
Wow.
Because of the politics of it. I recognized it back then. But I trained my first horse, a beautiful Palomino quarter horse that was from our stallion, back when I was 11 years old. And then when I moved to Aspen, Colorado, I became a trail guide at the age of 16 with my sister.
You have nerves.
Right. I loved doing that. And I'd have a crew of sometimes 15 people behind me.
God, that's just wonderful.
And I did that for a while. Then I did a lot of packing up into the Rocky Mountains with friends. And we go back for 4 or 5 days at a time.
Oh my goodness.
And you have to be prepared.
You're very prepared.
For anything. Like one time my horse went by a rock. I didn't notice it, and it slipped the back of his flanks open.
Oh boy.
But I had a sewing kit.
So kidding.
We sewed him up way above the tree line.
Unbelievable.
And that the vet later told me that we saved that horse. But the thing is, I built up a lot of techniques riding just by learning on my own.
Absolutely.
We had the cowboy way. This is just get on this, this turn left, turn right, pull back, pull them in a circle if they get going too fast. So that's the technique I learned. And so for me, decades later, this is something that even myself incorporating some of these techniques, it's eye-opening for me to realize even after 60 years of riding that I can learn all these new things. It's all shocking, but it's good. It feels good. I really can tell the difference. I have an 18-year-old American paint horse right now named Jax, and I bought him a couple of years ago this month, January. And he has been an eye-opener for me as I'm learning these new techniques and seeing the transformation there. So tell me, I'm like one example, but you've come across many examples in your many years of teaching. Give us an idea of some of the people that you have taught before and what they were able to progress and do in their time with you.
Well, I've had the fortunate experience of working with people that have never been on horses before. And I've taught people that have been writing for 40 and 50 years. So from knowing nothing to knowing a lot, but
different horses,
different
English,
styles.
Western,
yeah,
competitive,
not competitive. I've had in the past dealt with a lot of women who are middle-aged, who have either always wanted to learn to ride, never had the time, never had the money, busy with family. I've had people that are adults that have ridden all their life and come in and find they're not getting anywhere, and they've heard about centered riding. And I said, oh, okay, well, let's give it a lesson and see what happens. And usually they come back for 5, 6, 7 years. So
that long, seriously.
I have had students up to 25 years, and I'm talking very rarely do they ever miss a lesson.
And how many lessons do they do a month?
That would be once a week.
Once a week?
Yes, once a week.
For 25
Oh,
years?
yes.
Cindy, I'm impressed.
Yes, yeah. In fact, I had a woman, this even shocked me. I had a woman call me about 5 years ago, and she said, you're not going to remember me because I rode with you about 20 years ago, and I only took 2 lessons because that's all I could afford. And that was 20 years ago. And she says, I've never forgot those lessons. And I now live in LA. And what I want to do is I want to take the month of March off, and I'm going to drive up from LA every weekend to take as many lessons with you as I can, because that is how it impacted me.
Wow.
So 20 years ago, 2 lessons, and she did.
20 years.
She drove all the way from LA up to Grass Valley and back for the entire month of March.
I can understand how also being away from riding for a couple of decades, I too got caught up in a career, raising a child. The horse I had trained stayed with me for 28 years, right? And I had other horses too that we had here in California at our ranch in Mendocino County after we sold the ranch in Texas. But there was a time period when a lot of those horses passed away.
Right.
I didn't have another horse. And then until I would go and I would, outfitters. I would go to Colorado and go out on one of the 4 or 5 hour trips up by Snowmass and Independence Pass. And lots of places all around the world have outfitters where you can hire to do a ride. But getting to have your own horse again, getting back into that regular riding, it takes building that confidence back up, first of all.
Correct. Yes.
Thankfully, before you arrived, there was Jennifer Ruffalo. She's at the stables too. And she was trained according to principles that are very similar. And that's the other thing I wanted to talk about is how this compares to others. But again, remember, telling the audience that you can blend these techniques together.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Centered riding does not stand off on its own. It will help you whether you ride English, Western, or even Chinese. That's a joke.
I was trying to go back through all the years of my horse knowledge.
Never heard of that Chinese technique? In other words, it'll help you no matter what you do or where you go.
Right.
Well, what I can say is the most significant thing, the difference, even though I say that it does apply to everything, the difference is that I found is a lot of techniques will tell you, and I said this earlier, will tell you what to do, but not how to do it. And centered riding gets down into the very deepest root problems. And you solve your root problems, guess what? Your symptoms are going to go away. But if you're continuously dealing with the symptoms, for instance, this is a very common thing, is people being told to keep their hands quiet. Okay.
That's good detail because I was going to ask you to break this down and explain what some of these issues could be.
Okay. So the typical, one of the things, many things is people are told to keep their hands quiet. Well, there's a reason people move their hands. It's not that they're doing it on purpose. It's not out of necessarily nerves. The reason people move their hands is because they have no security. And if they have no security, then you have to address the seat. Okay. And once you address the seat and the security comes in and you address the independent rest of the body, meaning the legs are independent from the seat and the hands are independent from the seat. The seat is the security. Everything works off of the seat. You're not going to have a problem with your hands moving because you've found security. Now, if you were to watch me walk on a balance beam, I'm going to look like I'm conducting an orchestra because my arms and hands are going to be everywhere. And if somebody yells at me to tell me to keep my hands quiet, that tells me what to do, but not how to do it, which means you need to go to the root problem, which is I have no balance. Once I get the balance, I get the grounding, I get the centering, my arms and hands are free to do whatever they want instead of moving all over the place because I have no balance.
I can't tell you how much this really applies to, just for example, skiing. I was a skier from a very young age because I lived in Aspen and we grew up. That's what we did. And these are the very principles of grounding yourself and being centered. You want to be centered going down that mountain, going out through those bumps. You want to be centered.
That's right. You got to be really deep and heavy,
focused
and open in the center of that body. That's where your power is. And if your center of balance is up in your chest because you're not breathing and you're trying too hard, you're going to fall over.
Just like with talking with your voice, it'll get higher and higher.
That's right.
Unless you lower it.
Right. You got to lower it down. And so that
and imagery too, doesn't that come into play?
It's unbelievable.
Describe how that works.
Well, we learn through pictures. And a lot of times using imagery creates a very, very soft place. It's not telling somebody what to do. It's suggesting that they maybe wiggle their toes. If I start to see the ankle lock up inside the riding boot, and I can tell the toes are curled up like a parrot on a stick, I'll suggest that they open their toes and imagine that they're running their toes through the sand or playing the piano with their toes.
Very cool.
And so it's a lot different than saying your ankle's all locked up, stop locking it. Instead, I go to the toe, soften the toe, the ankle starts greasing up, the person starts breathing. It's kind of like a domino effect. When one thing starts to go well, it opens up the avenue for everything to go well. Just the same as one thing goes wrong, it can tend to make everything else go wrong. And that's why you have to start with your basics, your foundation, and working on getting the foundation to the point where every part of the body can take on its own responsibility. You have your safety, you have your security, you have the body going in the proper direction, meaning lengthening and widening and expanding. And there's a lot involved in that. And that all leads to communication. The horse understands you, and the two of you can get along pretty darn well because the communication is open and the horse can understand you.
You're listening to Cindy Leisure, who lives now in the Sea Ranch on the Northern California coast. She's from the East Bay area, Danville, lots of different areas where she has been teaching centered riding for decades. And she's now here and giving us some excellent insight into what centered riding is. And I just realized for our YouTube watchers that her mic was in the way, but we are live on YouTube, so you can watch this anytime. It'll be on the KGUA channel, and later on it'll be on our SoundCloud channel as well. I'm Leigh Lindsey, your host today. This is KGUA in Wallala, 88.3 FM. We are streaming around the world at kgua.org. And today's subject is actually very timely and apropos, having just this entire coast gone through a lot of churn and turmoil with this big cyclone storm that just hit our coast. And we have all been here pretty much around the clock bringing updates and news about weather and all that. So this helps us in our daily life. But let's go back to some of these specifics that we're talking about. And one of them is in centered riding, there's a thing called soft eyes.
Yes.
So that's another technique.
Mm-hmm.
Describe what that means.
Well, first of all, the basics. Sally called them the basics. And why does she call them the basics? Because they're very basic. One of them is the eyes. As humans, we can use our eyes two different ways. We can use them in a focused way, in a way that is looking out in front of us or in life in a very tunnel focused way, which can be changed into what we call soft eyes. So focused eyes versus soft eyes. And soft eyes is looking out as if you were looking into the wide angle lens of a camera. And you can see what you're looking at, but you can see the entire landscape around you. That's soft eyes. It's like peripheral vision. It's exactly the same thing. And when you are doing anything with your eyes open and soft, guess what? You're going to find yourself breathing better. So it goes back to what I was saying, how one good thing can lead to another good thing, can lead to another good thing. And soft eyes actually helps you become more aware of what you're doing. And when you're aware of what you're doing and you recognize you're doing it wrong, that's okay. You can say to yourself, yeah, you can say to yourself, oh, darn, I'm doing that nasty habit again.
And you'll be stiff.
And right? The awareness, then when you're given the tool how to change that, you can go, well, I don't have to be a prisoner to doing that wrong thing anymore. I can change. And then that's when you make the change. And over time, short time, those bad habits, those old habits will leave you and the new habits will take over. So the soft eyes help you to be aware so you can make change, helps you to breathe, which helps keep your brain going. And by the way, breathing is the cheapest thing you can do. You might as well do it. Some people breathe like it costs them $5 for every breath they take. So not only will you be better off and happier and your brain more functioning, your horse will love you. So the soft eyes, again, you can focus them or you can open them up. And when you open them up, the whole world can change for you. Again, it's very simple, very basic. The other basic is centering. The center of the body is below the navel inward. It's a conglomeration of very, very powerful, strong muscles. In fact, that's where your actual leg strength and arm strength comes from, is there. The core, that's exactly it.
Sounds very much, again, like martial arts
that's
training,
correct. Yes.
Correct?
Yeah. And so you want to be weighed in the pelvic area. You want to release and let go and come down into the saddle. There's a difference between sitting into the saddle and sitting on the saddle. And when you're sitting on the saddle, you are not safe. But when you're sitting into the saddle, you're safe. How do you be safe? Letting go, breathing, soft eyes, allowing your center of balance to come down. Sometimes I watch people ride and it looks like their center of gravity is in their shoulders. Like when you see cowboys galloping, on the John Wayne movies and the arms are moving up and down, that's because the center of balance is up in the shoulder and the chest instead of down in the pelvic area.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and when it comes down into the pelvic area, again, that's your safety, your security, your seat, the depth in there. everything else can lighten and let go and take on its responsibility of riding and training or whatever you're doing.
You've been listening to Cindy Leisure. She is a longtime instructor for centered riding and has been giving us a number of techniques in this past hour of Peggy's Place that we can incorporate if you are a horse owner or are going to ride a horse, even if you're just going up to Ross Ranch to ride with Toby Ross, or wherever you are in the world. These are techniques that you can use with your riding, but also in daily life and with even other sports. This is very good information, Cindy. And I'm really happy you were able to join me today here at KGUA.
Wonderful. I can talk another year about how wonderful this is and what it's done for people. But I know what it's done for me. It's been life-changing, and I love to pass that on to other people and have them experience the same thing.
And how can people get in touch with you again? What is that email address?
That's Cindy@leisureequestrian.com.
Cindy, say it again.
Cindy@leisureequestrian.com.
This is KGUA in Wallala 88.3 FM, and I'm been your host today, Leigh and Lindsey, and we are going to be going into Native America Calling in just a moment. And I just am getting some things ready in the background here, Cindy. Since we have a couple of minutes, I wanted you to give us a last bit of vision, if you can, for those and people out there that really want to know how can they take a first step in changing things with their horse.
Well, I would have to say the most important thing that we can do as people for other people, for animals, for horses, whatever it is, that we always check ourselves, because whatever is going on with us is what we're going to pass on to them. And if we are checking ourselves and making sure that we might be sitting in front of somebody with a soft eye or breathing, whatever it might be that helps us root ourselves and calm ourselves, we can pass that on to our horse, to our dog, to our cat, to our friends, and that it's a regular thing. You know, you got to kind of regularly check on it.
And on that note, we are going to say thank you, Cindy, for joining us today.
So wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me. And thank you all so much for listening.
And this show will repeat at 1:00 today. This is KGUA in Wallala 88.3 FM, streaming around the world at kgua.org. And we are going to be going into Native America Calling in progress. Today, this is KGUA in Wallala 88.3 FM. We have something else that is playing in the background, and I'm going to find out what that is. And it looks like it was YouTube over there. All right, got it. Okay, and let's see. They are just about to come on. Here we go. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. Pro wrestling. It's sports entertainment that mixes colorful characters, dramatic storylines, and body slams. Professional wrestling draws thousands of fans on TV screens and at live events. The sport has been criticized in the past for featuring Native stereotypes, but the growth of Native wrestlers has helped promote some positive characterizations. Coming up this hour, we'll speak with some Native wrestlers about their experiences in the ring. That's coming up right after the news.